On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Liz Henry to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Along with her husband, Joe, Liz transformed their family farm in Dane, Wisconsin into an award-winning bourbon whiskey business. With a grain-to-glass philosophy and a passion for authenticity, Liz shares how her trip to Kentucky sparked a dream, how dedication, family, and her 5 suggestions to success turned dream into reality. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, I hope you're having a good day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Today we are shooting out in Dane, Wisconsin, a suburb, some people might say, just north of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast on Facebook at Survive and Thrive 8791, the podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button or follow button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment. There's also usually a poll on there if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. This is where we get into introducing the episode and the guest as well. And my guest is sitting right next to me, decked out in blue today. Was that blue? Yeah. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Liz?
Oh, yeah. It just depends who's asking.
Just depends who's asking, she said. Well, if you're in my house, I don't need the internet. I don't need Google. I don't need Alexa. I just ask my wife. She's always right.
That's a winning answer, Tim.
Winning?
We tried to teach our sons that early.
Politically correct answer. According to an AI, artificial intelligence overview, the whiskey industry is experiencing growth. It's a competitive landscape with various challenges. While some individuals and companies find success, others face difficulties. Therefore, it is difficult to give a definitive answer regarding the exact number or proportion of people who succeed in this specific business venture. And my guest and her husband and 2 sons are being successful in this venture, at least in my
We hope so.
We hope so. Today I welcome Liz Henry to the Buck and Honey's remote studios, raised in Racine, is it Racine or Racine? Racine, Wisconsin. Liz attended St. Catherine's High School, located in Racine, and is a proud Angel. After graduating from high school, Liz would take her talents to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and graduate with a degree in meat and dairy animal science. After a few years in the work world, she would earn a master's degree in business strategy and finance from the University of Wisconsin School of Business. With her passion for agriculture, marketing, and a family farm business, what a combination, they own and operate Henry Farms and J. Henry and Sons Bourbon. Today, I'm so glad you could join us. Liz Henry, what is up?
Just so glad to be here, Tim. I really love that you and Buck and Honey's have paired up to bring these kind of stories to as many people as you can reach. I think it's an honor for me to be a part of it, mainly because we all have our stories, and the ability to survive and then thrive is pretty much a goal for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where we want to go.
Well, my sponsor, Tom Anderson, puts kind of his money where his mouth is, and I'll talk about that, but he does have a mental health professional on speed dial should he go in and walk in and say, hey, how's everybody doing today? And a cook or sous chef says, you know what, hey, I'm kind of struggling right now. Boom, let me make a call, and he gets somebody there immediately. But
he walks the talk.
He walks the talk about mental health. He certainly does. And he also sells J. Henry.
Indeed, he does.
Indeed.
He
does. It is growing season. How has the spring been?
We raise primarily seed corn, and seed corn is a very resource-intensive, challenging crop to raise. It's not like just put the seeds in the ground and watch them grow. We have to go through very rigid steps to make sure that every field is separated, that we're getting the right hybrid cross and no other influences, and that the males and the females get planted timing-wise correctly so that they cross-pollinate and create this new hybrid. So we've been very fortunate this year because we've gotten enough rain that we're not struggling, but also most of our fields, we raise over 2,000 acres. Most of our fields are up near Wisconsin Dells, Adams County, and it's sandier soil, so it's easier to grow with or without rain because we have irrigation on all of our acres.
I was going to say, are you hoping for knee-high by the 4th of July?
Always, and it's usually taller.
Usually taller.
Waist high.
Waist high, belt high by the 4th of July. With the summer right around the corner, what are you looking forward to this summer here on the farm?
It's pretty exciting time right now for a couple of reasons. One of the things that's most exciting is our son Joe has been back with us for over 5 years now. And
we just saw him this morning.
Yeah, he's going to be around. He has established our sales team, and he's established some really good events. He took what I did in the beginning and really enhanced it and made, because he also was named a master blender in the last 2 years. That's an auspicious title that very few people have. It means that he has such a good palate. He can choose which barrels will complement each other and make a better product. And he's also created several new products for us. So we have releases coming up for our ambrosia or honey finished barrels, our Sevillana, which is a Vino Naranja finish, and we also are going to be doing another outstanding in the field dinner in August, and so we're really looking forward to those opportunities to collaborate with. We just did a dinner for the UW Children's Hospital, working with Chef Dan Fox and Heritage Tavern, and every chance we get to work with the outstanding chefs and the bartenders and the local places, we get a real great enhanced sense of what we can do and what those folks are doing and share it with people.
That sounds like a plate full of stuff. So I got a couple of questions. If somebody is listening today to the episode and they want to know how to get to your information, where can they go to see that list of the calendar of events for the farm?
Thanks, Tim. I think the easiest way is to go online, jhenryandsons.com, jhenryandsons.com. And on our website, we have the events, we have the classes, we do cocktail classes, which are a lot of fun. We do special events. We're going to have a crafts and craftsmen event coming up pretty soon, and that'll be really exciting because we're bringing a lot of craftspeople who do art with bourbon barrels, make products with bourbon and honey and maple and all the things that we have also been involved with. That'll be fun. And we'll have food and music too.
Lots of things going on in the 100 days of summer, but all of a sudden it's going to be September.
Yeah, jam-packed Wisconsin summers.
Before we get to your story, and there's some good stuff here, I need to talk about our sponsor. So our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. Do you cook dinner?
Sometimes. Mostly my husband is cooking now. It's just the two of us at home, and so he's the master
of the grill. Two of us, we can make it. There we go, yes. I digress. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back. With locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in the Dane County area, and that's the area in and around Madison, Wisconsin, our great capital city. Most communities can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes, and this is where I do a little drum roll, and we're going to test your acousticness for your table. Ooh, that's got some nice reverb. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
I have. I also want to say they do an outstanding catering job. They've done some events here with us, but I've been to several weddings where they did the food and it was great.
They were just at the NFL draft as well.
That was pretty exciting. So were we. That was a moment that I think all of Wisconsin was super proud to be there. We hope it's not a one-off.
What is your favorite food at Buck and Honey's? Do you have a favorite, or do you just try everything?
I really like their calamari, and they have great salads.
On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like. So we'll talk about Liz's history, what happened to get her on the show. And in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened. And then we get into her 5 suggestions for thriving. So you grew up in Racine, Wisconsin, down along the Lake Michigan shoreline. What was life like growing up for you in Racine?
I have to say, living on Lake Michigan is a gift in that regard. It was a wonderful thing to be in Racine and be able to be at the lake anytime. Our Great Lakes are more or less our ocean in the interior here. And it created so many opportunities just to go swimming or hiking or sailing or walking. I have great stories about fishing for smelt and schmelting.
I love smelt.
If they're done right. And you know, salmon fishing in the spring. It's a lot of fun. And my family did those things on occasion, but we just enjoyed being on the lake. Racine was an interesting place when I was growing up. It was fairly divided, and there were populations of 1/3 white, 1/3 Hispanic, and 1/3 black. Was really the division in the city. We had a few struggles. It was a very segregated city, and the neighborhoods were pretty distinct, like, oh, you live on that side of town or that side of town. I think that was very instructive, because then when I lived in other countries, I couldn't comprehend why people would be for or against another group or another race, because it seemed like, no, everybody's like that, divided up and still one. Racine also has a really interesting story that I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but when I was in high school...
We're about to hear it.
You are. When I was in high school, there were 7 high schools, like 4 public high schools.
Case, Horlick.
Park. Maybe I'm mistaking. There's maybe 6. Walden, which was the alternative high school, the art school.
And St. Cat's.
And then St. Catherine's and Lutheran. Of the 6 high schools, thank you, we all had prom together.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Now, I'm not a big prom fan. I didn't love prom, but the whole act of it. But what was interesting was, and I think it was the Optimist or the JCs who served breakfast the next morning, they said...
Did anybody show up?
Well, they said, this is silly because we don't want to do this 6 times. So what they said is, we're going to have one great big, and at that time it was Memorial Hall. All of the proms had their little grand march, and then everybody went to prom together.
Oh, that's cool.
It was really cool because we had all been competing in athletics or debate or forensics or, neighborhoods, because you went to different schools.
Turf wars.
Yeah, exactly. But if you went to St. Cat's or Lutheran, you maybe lived in the Park or the Horlick neighborhood, but you were friends with those kids, but you still went to school at the other school. So we knew each other, and it never seemed odd to all be together in one place. It was actually a very cool thing.
Definitely a novel concept. Tell us about your family growing up.
My parents split when I was very young, and my dad lived in Chicago and my mom lived in Racine when she got remarried.
And by the way, Chicago is a suburb of Racine, right?
Yep. If you're taking the train, yeah.
Taking the train.
So I was mostly growing up in Racine. I have two brothers. They were my mom's second marriage, but they're my brothers. It was interesting. I don't know. We lived in the Park High School district.
Yep.
I was considered a South Sider.
South Sider. Okay.
Yeah. And if you worked at Johnson Wax or you worked at one of the major manufacturing companies that Racine had, then you were a North Sider.
Okay.
So there were benefits.
So St. Catherine's High School, class of 1979, and we already talked about you're an angel, but you're also a proud angel. What were you involved? What kind of activities laid the groundwork for where you're at today?
You might want to cut some of this out.
Might want to cut some of this out. We'll let her rip. We'll see.
I tried to participate in everything I could in high school. So I was in debate and forensics. I was in theater and drama. I was in sports for a few years, but then I started working, and I worked way too much. Mm-hmm. And that was another gift that we felt very fortunate to give our kids, that when they were in high school, that was their job, and working on the farm. Mm-hmm. While I was in high school, I was friends with a lot of different groups of kids, and it was a really great experience in the positives of meeting all those people.
After high school, you would take your talents to the University of Wisconsin, Madison. What was the lure?
I really thought I wanted to be a large animal veterinarian, and not a small animal vet. I have several friends who did finish that whole goal and became small animal vets, and I love small animals. We've had dogs almost all of our lives. The idea of vaccinating and spaying and neutering was not something I really wanted to do. Now, my husband laments that I should have, because all of those friends have been very successful.
I know a couple of vets, and they are extremely successful.
And our pets are very important to us. They're another member of the family, so that made sense. But no, I wanted to be with cows and horses and large animals. And so Madison was not yet having a vet school, but I knew that it would. And so when I came to Madison, I did large animal research every single semester I was here. And I got to do a lot of interesting and a lot of really grungy, nasty projects. Drawing blood from 30 sheep and 6 cows and 20 donkeys every day, twice a day. Those animals hated me.
Did you ever get, I've got to ask, did you ever get kicked?
Oh man, did I ever. But mostly it was just chasing and running because they didn't want to see me coming. But that was actually one of those early projects. What we were doing was developing a pregnancy test for cows. Later in life, when I saw early pregnancy testing kits on the shelf at Walgreens selling...
You're probably thinking, dang,
yes.
I should have invented that.
Exactly. I was like, wait a minute. It's the same concept, only they're making a ton of money on this project. And we were hoping to make cattle more efficient and dairy cattle more efficient, but wow, what a miss.
Too bad you weren't getting some royalties from that.
Exactly.
You earned a degree in meat and dairy animal science from the UW. What kinds of work were you doing when you graduated from the UW?
Well, my last year, actually, I had a scholarship, and I would go into the intern office pretty regularly because I had all these different internships on campus, working with genetics, we had hamsters that smoked cigarettes.
Really?
We were investigating sudden infant death, and I worked with a colony of diabetic dogs. And again, it was dealing with diabetes and losing vision with diabetes. So it was a lot of interesting projects.
I'm telling you, yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of interesting work, and I felt really honored to be able to do all that. But my last semester, I went up to the internship office, and Dick Martin, who was in charge of internships for our college, said, "Have I got an internship for you?" And I said, "Look, Dick, if I have to draw blood in Rats Hole, Indiana at 110 degrees in a tin shed, I think I've had enough. I'm good with that. And he said, no, it's an international internship.
Ooh.
He gave me the application, and I almost did not take that opportunity because it required $50 non-refundable dollars.
And that was a lot back then.
It was a lot. You could practically pay your rent for $50. $100 and you were in pretty good shape. But 50 non-refundable dollars, you had to apply. It was in Berlin. And at that time, I did not know Berlin was still behind the wall.
I was going to say, which side of the wall were you on?
West Berlin, yeah. And I'd never traveled any further than Illinois in the United States. I'd never been out of the country, really, and didn't have a passport. Weirdly, the only requirement, aside from the 50 non-refundable dollars, was you could not be of Arabic descent. So already we had this turmoil of who could go where and who was acceptable and who wasn't. And that was while Berlin was occupied, meaning there were the 4 quadrants. And there were Americans and French and British and Russian, Soviet folks in the 4 quadrants. I was so ignorant, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to risk it. Filled out my app, got accepted, and went to Berlin in the middle of January in 83.
And I heard it's beautiful in the middle of January, Berlin.
Yes, exactly. And it was very eye-opening. I learned a great deal. They still have places like the Gedächtniskirche, which is the...
Try to say that 5 times. Listeners, say that 5 times.
Gedächtniskirche. It's the Remembrance Church, and it's downtown Berlin, and it still has bullet holes and remnants of the bombings in Berlin. I learned a great deal that I had not even considered before, and I learned about very different groups of people than the folks I grew up with in Racine. I had this really interesting dichotomy of older people embraced Americans. They were happy that we dropped chocolate bars on them and helped them break out of the whole Soviet realm and the Nazi thing.
So you come back from this paid German internship where you learn to speak German, and you learn to ski, and you learned all kinds of other things. In 1986, you become the 39th Alice in Dairyland. And I'm going to ask you what goes into that, but I was thinking to myself as I was typing up the script yesterday, so maybe I should ask Liz, does you have to milk a certain number of cows in 60 seconds, or do you have to have your calf pens cleaned to a certain...
Just so you know, Tim, I did not grow up on a dairy farm. So this was a real exciting and interesting challenge for me. I applied in 1985, and my predecessor, Lisa Hosley Benke, won that year, and everyone knew she would be a fabulous Alice because she grew up on a dairy farm. She's beautiful, she's lovely, and she really understood how important it was to talk both to the producers and to the consumers about agricultural production in Wisconsin.
She was a good liaison, like a good go-between. Of course, I'm joking about that, but seriously, you just had to apply back then.
I decided I wanted that job then, and I didn't know enough about it the first year I applied. I actually didn't know much at all about it. It was just people on our dorm floor were saying, yeah, let's apply for this. And I had friends who were really working hard, and her speech was so good. Mine was mediocre at best. And so I certainly didn't deserve to win the first year. But the second year, I worked really hard because I felt, what better platform for anyone who's in the College of Ag and Life Sciences than to be able to promote all Wisconsin agriculture and be able to have that experience across the board. And it would beat the tar out of drawing blood from sheep.
I would say so.
So when I went back and applied, I really, really had a great experience again and got the job. But I think it was partly because then they were willing to get somebody who wasn't the perfect Alice after Lisa. So they were like, okay. And my platform was primarily bringing business skills to dairy producers and agricultural producers, making sure that we were profitable and we were making a living so that we could sustain our living out there.
After some time in the professional world, so now we fast forward to 11 years later after you graduate from the UW, you go back and earn a master's degree from the School of Business at the University of Wisconsin, and you earn a degree in business strategy and finance. What was that like going back to the classroom? Because that was before the day of you can do distance learning and be on the computer. You probably had to go back into the classroom. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, after being Alice, I worked at American Breeders Service, and partly my experience...
That's across the interstate, right?
Yeah.
ABS.
Yeah, the place with the signs, you know, and that was another great experience. I have to credit being in Berlin and having that international experience and understanding some of those markets with getting that opportunity. It was a new position promoting and marketing all of the international segment for that company. And 1/4 of their business was international. So it was a really great opportunity. I enjoyed it immensely. And also at that time is I got a scholarship to get my MBA from the National Holstein Association. I got to travel to India and work with collaborators on, in the Eastern Bloc to bring American genetics to all those different countries. So that was a lot of fun and a great experience, but that made me more ambitious about getting a business degree and making sure that I had solid business background so that I could share that with our customers and our farm.
It made a perfect combination and a perfect marriage of the expertise your husband has with the farm, and then now you've got the ability to sell that and the strategy power and the marketing power to do that. I do have to ask a question because some of the listeners are, hopefully their hands are at 10 and 2 and they're driving to work or driving home. But did the sales go up at ABS in the German market?
They did. We did really well, and that was a good time to be involved in that market. I mean, there was a day when there were $1 million cows, and Wisconsin was loaded with
$1 million cows?
Yep, $1 million cows and their embryos. They used to send people on a cruise with cattle on the ship and have a live auction on the ship selling cows and embryos for millions of dollars.
I do have to ask, because we're in that horse racing season, did we have the Secretariat of Cows
Indeed.
In Wisconsin?
Indeed. He's buried over across the highway. A couple of those guys.
Do you remember what the cow's name was?
Well, it was a bull.
Bull.
We sold the bovine genetics on the male side because that was easier to keep them all going. But we had Valiant and Elevation, and these these bulls were the fathers of great lines of cattle. Back to the MBA, I already had our first son at that point, and so going into Madison and then trying to be in a study group and trying to figure things out with 20, 30-somethings who were like, we're going to go work out and then we're going to go study for 6 hours at 8:30 at night, and we're going to stay out until midnight and then we're going to go drinking. And it wasn't the same anymore.
I can imagine not.
No, my husband had a lot of business experience, and that was the good thing. When he started this farm, when he took this farm over, he had graduated from the University of Notre Dame, and he studied banking and finance. And the real reason he did that is he wanted to lead the farm. He did not want to be a seed corn producer for the rest of his days. And what happened is he came home, he graduated, and this farm was foreclosed upon. So Joe did what he and we are fortunate to consider the right thing. he saved the family farm. He worked part-time for himself and part-time for someone else, and he has always been very fiscally conservative, and he made it work. And so by the time we got married, we were almost out of debt. Not entirely, but that's why I tell people sign a prenup. I wouldn't, but that meant I was in debt now too. So we got through that, and that was good. But I did know that I needed to have more business knowledge, primarily because I, for a short while, did the books and field scouted here on the farm before I worked at ABS.
There's so much I'm learning today myself about your background, and it's really fascinating what has happened to lead to why we're here today, which is the taking that risky business chance, leap of faith, and going into the bourbon whiskey business, which we're going to talk about. But because our listeners want to hear how that turns out and how you've become widely recognized as a high quality product and a leading craft distillery in Wisconsin because of your grain to glass. I really love that grain to glass approach, which makes J. Henry and Sons a top tier bourbon in Wisconsin. I need to talk about the sponsor one more time. So Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning. With 4 locations in the Madison area, one is always near. People ask me, why Buck and Honeys? And I talked about this earlier, Liz, but owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honeys does. In March 2009, the Henry family distilled their first batch of bourbon. Since then, behind the work of her husband Joe and her 2 sons, Liz and Henry Farms has not looked back and are thriving in the world of bourbon whiskey. Liz is here to share her story and hopes it inspires someone wanting to take the leap of faith in any business whatsoever or take that new path. So please stay tuned. Don't change that dial. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365 and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim DeCora. We are in the Buck and Honeys remote studios out in Dane, Wisconsin, just north of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Liz Henry is here today to share her story about how her and her family and 2 sons now have taken that leap of faith to pursue business in the world of bourbon whiskey. She hopes her story will help others who might be considering a new professional path to survive and thrive just like they have so far in life. Since the show has a mental health component to it, did you experience any anxiety with the unknown or depression thinking about what life was like or what life was going to be like jumping into the whiskey business, jumping head first? I think you guys did.
That's a great question, Tim. I think a lot of us, as we're entering a new business or a new job, for example, we have anxiety about different things. The Peter Principle, am I good enough? Will I make it? But we often don't even realize the things that are gnawing at us inside. And there were mental health issues in both sides, my husband Joe's and my family. There was schizophrenia, there was depression. A couple of people actually took their own lives, and the other challenges were there was alcoholism and on both sides of the family. And small thing, but I didn't realize until I got my master's degree that I am dyslexic and that I have these ADD, obsessive compulsive tendencies. So what that does is it spins you into anxiety that you can't control, and you keep thinking about it, and you keep thinking that you're going to fix something, and you keep thinking that you have to do everything and it has to be done your way. And so those parts for me were really challenging, because I did stay up all night wondering if that was good enough, if that was the best way to do that, if I should have done it differently, how I'm going to get this done, 17 more things that have to be done tomorrow, which of course you can't get all 17 done, especially if you're dependent on others and other, procurement chains, for example, to get them done. But it was this real difficult stage for me. But even bigger before that was the question when Joe came home and said, I think after we went down, we visited Kentucky, and he had already had this thought in his mind. Joe's a really thoughtful, anticipatory fellow, and he said, I think we could make bourbon. And I was like, sure, honey, go ahead. I don't have to do anything differently. I was working at the university at the time and working with great students. It was a lot of fun. And he just did this as a little project. But my first question to him was, are you sure? His father and both of my step-parents and grandparents were all alcoholics. And it suddenly becomes very real when you say, oh, yeah, we're going to make liquor.
We're going to make alcohol.
Yeah, we're going to make spirits that we want people to drink. We want them to buy it. And, don't get me wrong, I don't ever want to encourage anyone who shouldn't or doesn't choose to drink. Mm-hmm. But that's the MO, is let's go. Let's make something that's so good and we're so proud of it that everyone will want it. And so there's a difficult space there. Mm-hmm. And our boys were still in high school. So we knew that was not something to be encouraged. We weren't like, oh yeah, we're making booze and they can get it all they want. They didn't, but they still managed. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a very serious conversation for all of us. And the idea that you want so desperately to make your business successful, which means you're relying on people drinking alcohol. And you're producing it, and you're producing it as well as you can, making a fine, excellent premium product. But is that something you want to do?
During these times of mental struggles, when you're up late at night and you can't fall asleep, what were you doing to offset those?
Honestly, in the beginning, nothing. I didn't realize what a struggle I had. Mm-hmm. I thought this was normal. And I'm sure anyone who's had a business, a family farm, those are all really fraught with challenges as far as what's fair, what's equitable, who's doing more, who's doing less, who's good at this, who's not, and how do we keep everybody and a cadre of employees, how do we keep them positive and involved and feeling as good about it as we should? But no, I thought that was kind of normal, to work yourself to a frazzle, to not sleep more than 4 hours, to get up in the middle of the night and start doing work because you're afraid you won't get it all done. And it took quite a while to figure out that I needed more help than I could take. Mm-hmm. Or that I was getting. You can read all the books, you can listen to the tapes, you can do those things. And it's all helpful. It's the same as any opportunity where you go, I would like to get better at something. And you take those moments to work on it, but often we still don't think that we need as much help as we really do.
In 2008, you and Joe take a trip to Kentucky, the home of the bourbon industry. From what little I know about the bourbon industry, Kentucky bourbon, that would change your lives. How so?
I really think, Tim, great question. One of the things, because at that time I didn't even drink whiskey. I didn't touch it. I had a bad experience, and as too youthful, too much, too nasty a product, And so whiskey just wasn't in my repertoire. And so we went on all these great tours with the American Distilling Institute and all the people who were distilling in Wisconsin at that time were on this trip with us. And so we had a really nice time, but I wasn't having this whiskey thing at all. And on the way home, Joe said, well, I think we could make whiskey. Okay, fine, go ahead. And so he very thoughtfully started making whiskey on a very small scale. He did it with a custom distiller. In other words, the distiller took our recipe, took our grains. He started growing grains that were the historic grains his dad used to raise, developed at the University of Wisconsin in the 1930s. And they're all heirloom, proprietary grains that he went back to the university and said, hey, could I get some of those seeds so that I could start revamping that brand of corn that my father raised? And he did all of that. I wasn't very helpful at the time. He was doing it. But I think one of the priorities for him at that time was he sort of had a moment where he remembered that he didn't want to stay on the farm. And we were looking at the boys going, gosh, neither of them has expressed a keen desire to be a seed corn producer. And by diversifying the business and adding this value-added production, he created another set of more work, but also more things to be involved with and more ways for the boys to come back and continue seed corn production, but also supporting the bourbon business.
That is so cool, because what Joe did, your husband Joe did, was he took what his dad did and made it a little bit better, which is going to be so cool to see what Jack and Joe are going to do, that take what you and Joe did, and then now they're going to probably do some diversification of some point. But what they're going to do is they're going to take the baton and run with it and continue to improve and make things better, which will be great for you and Joe when you're in retirement.
We hope so.
In March of 2015, you release your first non-seed product.
Yep.
J. Henry and Sons 5-year aged Wisconsin straight bourbon. And you won a gold medal in the aged bourbons category from the American Distillers Institute. How cool was that to get some recognition? It sounds like on the national level.
And that was especially cool because it was in Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, where all the 800 other whiskeys and many established brands and varieties were in that competition, in that race. So it was the best thing about winning that first gold medal was we weren't on the market yet, but it gave us a great affirmation that Joe had really started doing this well, doing it right. He wasn't making vodka, he wasn't making gin, he just made whiskey, and he aged it 5 years. So that was great to have the affirmation, but it was also great to feel like, okay, we've got something we want to sell. And at first, several people said, Wisconsin straight? You're going to call it that? Like, are you sure you don't want to hide that? Because Kentucky is the home of bourbon specifically and whiskeys. And I'm really glad we stuck with that because it's Wisconsin heirloom grains. It's our farm producing them. It's our employees not just making the grains, but then our distiller distilling it and us aging it here on the farm. So it's a true Wisconsin treat. But after that gold medal, we won double gold at major international competitions, at the San Francisco International Spirits Competition and the New York World Wine and Spirits Competition. And I didn't know until several years later what a big deal those were. Our younger son Jack and I were in Scotland, and we were doing Scotch tours, and the last day of the last tour, they very proudly brought out, we went on the premium tour, and so we saw all these different varieties of scotches, and we enjoyed the tour of the beautiful, historic Scotch distillery. And then they brought out the thing they were most proud of, and it was a single barrel that won a double gold medal at the San Francisco International Spirits Competition. And all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Holy cow, we've got 4 of those. 4 double gold medals, which was a huge accomplishment for a little farm from Wisconsin. So I then realized that Joe was really making good bourbon. And then a couple years later to have our son Joe become a blender was another real great move on the fact that we're doing things as well as we can, and we hope that that continues.
In 30 seconds, can you tell our listeners, because again, I mentioned this earlier, how whiskey goes from grain to grass? I learned, this is a quote from you somewhere, I think, or attributed to you. It says, I learned that bourbon is a specific type of whiskey. It is brewed only in the U.S. and must be of at least 51% corn, hence your corn business. To be considered bourbon, it has to be aged in a new brand charred oak barrel. So I kind of laid the foundation, but I'm going to shut my yapper here. 30 seconds, tell us how whiskey goes from grain to glass. Ready, set, go.
It's all about hope. It's all about planning. It's just Joe still raising corn, but doing the same things he would do with seed, only he's doing it with all the mash bill grains. They are different grains than the ones we sell as seed. And once we get our great crew and they grow all these beautiful grains and they handle them very specially, then we mash it up, boil it, ferment it. That creates beer, more or less. And then once we take the wort or the liquid off the beer, we distill it. That's separating the alcohol and the water, more or less. And then we take that new make spirit, the white whiskey, the stuff that was mainly corn, and we put that liquid into barrels, and it has to meet a certain priority there. It has to be above 80 proof and below 125. And we age it in new charred oak barrels where it absorbs the wood sugars, and it ages over the time of 5 years. All those different staves, all those different barrels create character and add flavor, and 100% of the color comes from that process. And then when it gets done, our son Joe starts sampling. Our son Jack is probably going to be doing that too. And they start deciding what product it'll go into. Then it gets bottled, labeled, and hopefully put on a shelf somewhere, either served in a bar or a restaurant or in a liquor store, or here at our tasting room in Dane.
This is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens or pencils, and jot some things down. Here are Liz's suggestions that have allowed her to survive and thrive. Not only her, but I think her husband and eventually sons, while helping her family make a slight change in their business plan going forward. I'm going to toss these in softball style, and I'm going to ask you to see if you can hit these in about 60 seconds. Here's what we talked about earlier. Number 1, be authentic. Go ahead and hit that.
Right now, our mission statement is to be real farmers making real bourbon whiskey with great employees as well as we can. And authenticity serves us so well because no one can ever come back and say, oh, I don't believe this, or you didn't do that, or you took a shortcut, or you changed this. Everything is supposed to have a purpose and an intent, being true both to yourself and to your business and your crew is necessary.
And your product. Number 2, passionate. Go ahead and hit that.
If you're not passionate about it, it's going to be really hard to get everyone else passionate about it. You know, the boys maybe didn't have a choice because, this is it. Either you get excited about it or you leave and then it's a different gig. We've always been really excited, and I'm really proud of both my husband and our sons and our employees because they do a great job to share this with everybody.
And you love coming to the farm every day. Number 3, empathetic. Go ahead and hit that.
Well, that one goes back to what we were saying earlier about you really have to understand where your customers and your employees and your team are coming from. And if you don't have some sense of that, it's not easy to translate that into success for both sides. And it really does need to be a win-win proposition. Zero-sum games never end up well.
Number 4, collaborative. Go ahead and hit that.
Most of our greatest successes or opportunities to really take the business to another level have come from collaborating with the university, with chefs and bartenders, with our family members, with other people who share a passion about a segment of the industry or a part of our business, and or our participants in it. And we just love working with other groups and other folks because it just amplifies everybody's message.
And the last one, number 5, always be learning. Go ahead and hit that.
Well, I think that one's the humble state, is if you don't recognize how much you don't know, then you won't have the chance to learn it. And we are always trying to learn, not do better, more, faster only, but to also recognize that, and it's a struggle for me because I have to admit that my way isn't the only way, but that if I keep learning that some ideas are actually better than mine, which is always a shocker to me, but it does work.
Being honest, being open, and also being willing to learn something new, or to maybe say, I'll swallow my pride on this and go your way. It's interesting that I see the highway in the background. I'm glad you don't say, hey, it's my way or the highway, because it's right there.
There it is.
There it is. What a great episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you've thrived after a challenging time in the family business, and then go on a different, sort of a different way. You're still going forward in both things. It's inspiring. It really is.
Thanks.
Your story reminds us all to have some coping skills or mental health tools in the toolbox when a person or a family goes through a change in their professional lives. Despite that, you have adapted and have survived and thrived. Our call to action, Liz Henry just shared her story, and it's what it's like to start a new business and rebrand the family. She learned to be adaptable and entrepreneurial. Here are Liz's 5 suggestions that helped her survive and thrive through some unknown times in her life. And those are, number 1, be authentic. Number 2, be passionate. Number 3, be empathetic. Number 4, be collaborative. And number 5, always be learning. As we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, are there any final thoughts, Liz?
I just want to thank you for sharing so much time with me, Tim. And I really know, and you've heard this before, but no one gets to a point of feeling satisfied or successful alone. And generally speaking, the more people you bring along with you, the better. But I have to be grateful every day for my husband because he puts up with a lot. And he deals with me on a daily basis. He's a thoughtful, conservative guy who has always made it work. And I'm grateful for our sons. The most important thing in the world to me is our family and being together and enjoying the fruits of our labor together is really exciting. and our friends and family and employees.
I see one right there.
Who are just hopping in. Yeah, it's a journey no matter what, but it's a really better, easier, more fun journey when you do it together with somebody.
You've got a great husband, and you already know it, but 2 awesome kids who I had an opportunity to work with back when they were young, little shavers, and you have done very well with them. You've done really well with your business. So I'm so glad you came on today, and you're going to give the listeners a lot of stuff. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learn to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecor@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.